Have you ever wondered why some women disappear into the silence, only to be remembered in the minds of men, like a half-forgotten dream, that won't stop haunting them? Why a scent, a symbol, or the rustle of a single leaf can bring them back to the edge of obsession? Regret and longing, there are forces that cannot be seen, only felt. Rituals older than words, more primal than reason. One such ritual lives quietly beneath the noise of logic. The midnight burning of the bay leaf. Not because the leaf itself is magic, but because intention, when whispered into flame, becomes a summoning. And woman, when she remembers who she is beneath her wounds, becomes the storm they never thought would pass back through. She is not casting a spell on him. She is invoking the forgotten self within her, the archetypal anima, the eternal feminine who knows her worth, who once folded herself into pleasing shapes, but now rises like smoke. When she burns that leaf, she burns the illusion that she ever had to beg for love. That ritual is not about him. It's about reclaiming sovereignty. And yet, paradoxically, it is that very reclamation that draws him back like a moth drunk on memory. Most women mistake leaving for forgetting, but the feminine does not forget. She holds deep in her unconscious every pain ever swallowed, every apology never received, every text that went unanswered. In the stillness of midnight, she writes his name on the leaf, not to wish him back, but to release him from the prison of her longing. And that is what wakes something in him, because men, especially emotionally, unavailable men, are attuned not to the words women say, but to the psychic detachment they rarely see. When she lets go without rage, when she surrenders without weakness, she becomes the echo they can't silence. Carl Jung spoke of the anima and animus, the unconscious feminine in men, the unconscious masculine in women. When a man feels drawn to a woman who reflects his anima, it is not her personality he chases. It is his own missing pieces. The burn of the bay leaf is a symbolic death of codependence. It tells the universe, I no longer seek validation in his return. I seek the return of myself. That is why they come running, not to possess her, but to feel whole again in her presence. Shadow work begins in the unlit corners of the heart. She must ask herself, why did I want him to come back? Was it love, or was it the hunger to rewrite rejection? Was it the belief that his apology would fix the fracture in her self-worth? These are the honest wounds that demand to be faced in solitude. She sits in the stillness not to wait for him, but to remember that before she was his maybe, she was already whole. And yet he will feel it. The shift. The psychic vacuum left when she no longer broadcasts need. That absence echoes louder than any message. Because for the emotionally avoidant man, it was never about her words. It was about the energetic tether, the invisible cord that told him she was still there, waiting in the emotional background. When that is severed, he feels the void, and he will come searching for the flame he once ignored. The burning of the bay leaf is a signal to the unconscious, a portal opening. The smoke curls not toward the sky, but into the forgotten memory of power. Power that was once traded for closeness, for crumbs of affection. But no more. This ritual is not desperate, it is decisive. And decision is the most erotic energy of all. She does not burn the leaf with trembling hands. She holds it like a priestess in ceremony, channeling the silent scream of generations of women who silence themselves to be loved. And when the leaf turns to ash, so does the illusion that she was ever not enough. At that moment she shifts archetypes. No longer the abandoned lover, now the alchemist, the queen, the self-possessed. The bay leaf was never meant to bring him back. But when he senses the return of her self-possession, he cannot help but return, not out of pity, not out of guilt, but out of magnetic reverence. She is no longer the version of her he left behind. And when he returns, he will look into her eyes and realize she is no longer trying to make him stay. That is when he will beg to. They always return to the place where they last felt power. But what they don't expect is that the woman they left behind has died. In her place stands someone who has stared into the mirror of rejection and found something holy in the reflection. She has crossed the threshold from girlhood to sovereignty, not by punishing him, but by no longer needing him to redeem her story. When the bay leaf crumbles, so does the illusion that closure must come from another. That sacred fire, the one lit not for vengeance, but for liberation, calls forth the ancient feminine within her. The Persephone who descended into shadow and emerged crowned. This is not the woman who texts twice. This is not the woman who lies awake wondering what she did wrong. This is the woman who knows. He left not because she wasn't enough, but because he wasn't ready to meet her depth. In Jungian thought, every encounter with another is an encounter with the self. He projected onto her his anima, his ideal of woman, nurturing yet elusive, devoted yet defiant. But he did not see her. He saw the mirror she held up to his own fragmentation. And she, in turn, saw in him the father figure or fantasy lover who might finally affirm what the little girl in her had always longed to believe. You are worthy of staying for. That hope, that painful, beautiful illusion is what she burns with the bay leaf. Not because she hates him, but because she finally refuses to betray herself for a feeling that never fed her soul. You watching this now, maybe you felt the ache. The way your chest hollowed the night he stopped calling. The ache of wondering if he ever thinks of you, if he ever regrets the way he vanished like smoke. You don't need to deny that hurt. You honor it. You don't suppress the tears. You anoint yourself with them. Because emotional alchemy is not about pretending you don't care. It's about turning longing into sovereignty. That's why the midnight hour matters. Midnight is the liminal space between the death of yesterday and the birth of tomorrow. A ritual performed then is more than symbolic. It's psychological warfare against the outdated self. The woman who lights the fire at midnight is saying, I no longer live in the story of who I was when he left. I no longer orbit his absence. And in doing so, she triggers something primal in his unconscious. Men may not understand the language of emotion, but they understand the loss of attention. They may not read your texts, but they will feel the absence of your energy like a house stripped of scent. Warmth, light. He won't know why, but something in him will shift. The feminine field he once took for granted has gone still, and that silence will roar louder than all your pleas ever could. Here lies the paradox. You no longer want him back, and that is when he feels you most. But don't misunderstand. This is not a game. This is not manipulation. This is metamorphosis. In Stoic philosophy, Epictetus reminds us that freedom begins the moment we no longer seek external control. When you release the outcome, when you burn the name not as a wish, but as a funeral, you reclaim your power. And your power is what he was drawn to all along. The tragedy is, he couldn't handle it when it was directed at him. But when it's directed inward, when it becomes devotion to your own becoming, it becomes irresistible. She no longer tries to explain herself. She no longer imagines confrontations in her head. She no longer checks his social media to see if he's watching. She's watching herself now. Watching herself rise from the ashes of emotional dependence like a myth reborn. The woman who once twisted herself to be understood has now become incomprehensible. And there is nothing more captivating than a woman who no longer tries to be consumed. So let him come back. Let him return with apology in his eyes and nostalgia on his tongue. But know this, the woman who burned that bay leaf does not wait by the door. She does not sit in mourning for a ghost. She chooses whether she opens that door not out of need, but from discernment. Because a queen may forgive, but she never forgets who she became in his absence. She became the woman who no longer feared silence. Because in silence she met herself. In the absence of his attention, she unearthed her own. And it was in that hollow ache, the one that used to scream, "Why wasn't I enough?" that she planted something new, a question more powerful than any answer he could give. What if I never needed him to choose me for me to be whole? It is a question that echoes through the deep chambers of every woman who is confused, being chosen with being valued. It is the ache of the collective feminine wound, passed down through mothers and daughters and fairy tales, that says your worth is confirmed only when a man names it. But when she stands beneath the moonlight with the fire in her palm, something ancient stirs. She no longer seeks his gaze to feel seen. She sees herself now, clearly, unapologetically. And in that gaze, unflinching, shadow-kissed, sacred, She meets the part of her she once abandoned to be lovable. This is the alchemical path Carl Jung spoke of when he described individuation, the process of integrating all parts of the self, the wild, the wounded, the wise. To become whole is not to become perfect. It is to stop hiding your longing, your rage, your softness, your boundaries. And as she calls her energy back from all the places, she scattered it in texts unsent, in lips bitten back, in dreams deferred. She becomes magnetic in a way that no effort could ever achieve. You don't chase when you're whole. You radiate, and when you radiate, the world shifts to meet you. Men sense it before they understand it. They feel the severed tie in their gut, like a thread snapping somewhere deep within their rib cage. He may tell himself he's just curious, that he misses the way she laughed, or the way her eyes softened when he was vulnerable. But beneath that surface longing is something more primal, the feeling of being safe in her presence, without knowing why. And now that presence is gone. What she has done is not simply spiritual, it is psychological. She has revoked her unconscious permission to be used as a mirror for his growth. She no longer plays the role of emotional scaffolding for a man who won't face his own shadow. And that refusal, that sacred no, is what births the possibility of a different kind of return. A return not born of craving, but of awakening. But she does not light that bay leaf to guarantee his awakening. That was the old self, the one who burned candles hoping he'd come back changed. The new self knows. He may return, but the choice is mine. This is the power of energetic detachment. It's not apathy, it's authority. The authority of a woman who has met her inner masculine, her own animus, and no longer projects it onto others. She now protects herself. She now validates herself. She now shows up for herself in all the ways she once begged someone else to. That balance between feminine softness and masculine structure is what makes her untouchable. And when he returns, he will feel it like a wall of wind. He won't know what happened, only that she is not the same. And in that unfamiliarity, he will feel both loss and longing. The kind of longing that reaches back into every night he didn't reply, every moment he doubted her value, every time he chose his fear over her depth. She is no longer his emotional playground. She is a temple. And he will have to decide if he is ready to enter barefoot and reverent, or walk away forever. Because the woman who has burned the bay leaf does not go back to beg. She does not ask for scraps. She does not reopen old wounds to see if he finally understands the pain he caused. She knows that understanding may never come. Closure may never arrive. But she no longer needs it. And in that space, in that utter self-acceptance, he may kneel, or he may run. But either way, she will not chase. Because she has become the flame, not the moth. The goddess, not the offering. She has become the force he once mistook for fragility. The softness he assumed meant surrender was, in truth, the stillness of power restrained. And now, unbound from the need to be chosen, she no longer bends herself into forms to fit inside his fears. She has burned the lie that told her love means sacrifice without reciprocity. That to be wanted, she must first be broken. And that fire, though small, though silent, became her rebirth. The bay leaf was just the beginning. A symbol, yes, but also a declaration. The moment she set it alight was the moment she stepped across the inner threshold, from shadowed girlhood into the raw, radiant clarity of womanhood. A woman who knows the terrain of her own wounds, so intimately that she no longer waits for a man to kiss them closed. She has kissed them herself with the tenderness of truth. And now she walks differently, not louder but deeper. She does not seek the crowd's approval. She does not fill space with explanations. She has become the embodiment of what Jung called the integrated self, the totality of being, where nothing is cast away, nothing is denied. Her darkness and light dance now as equals, and this terrifies those who only knew her when she kept her power dimmed. He will feel that shift. They always do. Because men, especially those who have lived in avoidance, who have fed themselves on emotional fast food, don't forget the meal that nourished their soul. She may have once served herself in silence, giving and hoping, nurturing and waiting. But now, Now she serves herself first, and the fragrance of that self-feeding, that self-loving, draws them back in ways even they can't explain. It is a hunger that speaks not to the body, but to the forgotten heart. But do not mistake their return as evidence of transformation. Many will come back not because they have changed, but because you have. They are drawn to the evolution they once resisted. And you, fierce and awake, must discern, is he returning to grow, or to feed again from the well he never learned to fill within himself? The woman who has burned the bay leaf knows the difference. She does not leap at apologies. She listens with the ears of her soul. She watches his actions, not his promises, because once she believed in potential. Now she believes in patterns. That's the gift of pain transmuted into wisdom. She sees with eyes unclouded by hope. She no longer projects the image of what could be. She stands firmly in what is. And if what is does not nourish her, she walks. Not because she doesn't feel, but because she has finally learned that love is not proved through endurance of neglect. It is revealed in reciprocity, presence, and truth. So when he comes back, and he will, he may say the words you once ached to hear. I miss you. I see it now. You were the one. But the ache is gone. The girl who longed to be seen has been seen by herself. The part of you that once needed his return has dissolved in flame and smoke. Now you want alignment. You want honesty. You want to feel safe in love, not just excited by it. And should he come back offering less than what your soul now requires, you will smile, not cruelly but with grace, because you understand now he was never meant to complete you. He was meant to awaken you, and awaken you he did, not through love, but through loss. That is the real magic of the ritual, not that it brings him back, but that it brings you back, to the body you abandoned in longing, to the breath you held every time your phone lit up, to the spirit that waited patiently beneath all your pretending. You no longer pretend. Not to be okay, not to want less, not to be smaller, quieter, easier. You are the woman who speaks with her full voice, who walks in her full light, who says yes from truth and no from power. And in that wholeness, you call back to yourself every version of you who once begged, who once bent, who once believed that being chosen by another was the ultimate prize. Now you know. Being chosen by yourself is the beginning of everything. The beginning of everything. It happens quietly. Not with fireworks, not with fanfare, but in the sacred stillness after the fire has burned out, and you are left alone in the dark with only your breath. The ashes of the bay leaf whisper truths that once made you tremble. And yet now you do not flinch. You listen. You hear what the silence has been trying to tell. You for years. You were never hard to love. You were just asking to be loved by someone unequipped to meet your depth. And this truth, carved from grief, refined by solitude, is the altar upon which you rise. There was a time when you would have mistaken his return for redemption. You would have opened your arms without asking why he left, or whether he had truly changed. Because you thought love meant always saying yes. You thought forgiveness was always the holy thing. But now, the holy thing is discernment. Now love does not mean accepting crumbs. It means holding out for a table built in mutual reverence. Jung taught that the journey to wholeness cannot be done without facing the shadow. And this man, this ghost, this ache, this echo, was your shadow disguised as romance. He was your father wound, your abandonment wound, your inner critic's favorite weapon. He was the living embodiment of the part of you that feared being too much and not enough all at once. And that's why you loved him. Because he mirrored the very thing you came here to heal. The moment you see this, everything changes. You no longer see him as the villain. You see him as the teacher. But that does not mean he belongs in your life. Some lessons are meant to be honored and released. Some mirrors must be shattered to see what's real beneath them. He may not understand this. He may feel entitled to the old version of you, the one who bent her boundaries, who forgave too easily, who answered every call no matter how late. No matter how empty the words that followed. But that woman is gone. She was buried beneath the flames, mourned in the midnight ritual, and reborn in the silence that followed. Now he must earn access to the garden he once trampled. And you, goddess of your own evolution, will not open the gates out of loneliness. You no longer fear the quiet. In fact, you treasure it. Because in the stillness of your solitude, you found something he could never give you, yourself. You walk now with the weight of someone who has been through her own underworld and came back with her crown. You know the cost of betraying your intuition. You know the ache of self-abandonment. And that knowledge has made you dangerous in the best way. Dangerous to the lies that once kept you small. Dangerous to the games he used to play. Dangerous to the systems that fed you fairy tales and called them destiny. Because you've written a new story now. A story where your love is not a prize for persistence. Where your body is not a place men come to heal and then leave. Where your time is not up for grabs. Where your light is not dimmed so others feel more comfortable. A story where your no is final and your yes is sacred. This is the part no one tells you. When you truly heal, they do come back, but by then you may no longer want them. And that, more than any ritual, more than any midnight incantation, is the true spell. The transformation of your desire. The realization that love is not something to be earned. That worth is not negotiated. That closure is an internal process, not an external apology. So when he reappears, whether it's a message, a dream, or a chance meeting, you do not rush to interpret the signs. You don't race to Google what it means when an X resurfaces. You already know. It means your energy has shifted. It means your detachment has created a ripple in his world. It means the power you once gave away has returned to its rightful owner. You. And now you have a choice. Not from desperation, not from fantasy, but from grounded clarity. Do you want him back? Not the idea of him. Not the potential of who he could be, but the reality of who he is today? Does he meet the standards your healed self holds dear? Is he capable of standing in your truth without shrinking from it? Because the woman who burns the bay leaf at midnight is not calling back a man. She is calling back her soul. And when the soul returns, there is no longer any room for half-loves. She becomes untouchable to the ones who only knew how to touch her body, but never her spirit. She no longer opens herself to be tasted by those who refuse to be fed by their own healing. She no longer lowers her standards in the name of empathy, or mistakes her intuition's warning for a trauma bond's yearning. Because now she knows the difference between longing and love, between nostalgia and alignment, between the fantasy of who someone could be and the reality of who they are. This is the death of illusion, and it is liberation. She remembers now, clearly, fiercely, that the way someone returns says everything. If he comes with clarity, accountability, consistency, perhaps there is something to explore. But if he comes with vague words and old patterns, if he comes only to reclaim the feeling of being adored without earning it, then he is not returning to love her. He is returning to feed from her again, and that will never be allowed again, because she no longer plays the game of trying to be understood by someone who refuses to understand themselves. She no longer sacrifices her peace to fix what he broke inside himself. She knows now, it is not her job to rescue a man from his own unwillingness to evolve. It is not her calling to be the emotional rehab for someone who only wants to feel better, not be better. He may come running back, yes, but this time she does not run toward him. She does not open her arms out of habit or hope. She stands still, rooted, watching. She does not speak until she hears what she needs to hear. She does not touch until she feels true safety. She does not dream until she sees his actions match his words. Not for a day, not for a week, but for as long as it takes to prove he is no longer the man who left her empty. This is not cruelty. This is boundaries. This is the sacred fire of a woman who has finally learned to love herself more than the story she once wrote with someone who did not stay. And if he cannot meet her there, she blesses him and lets him go. Because now she understands. Not all returns are redemptions. Some are tests, some are echoes of the old world, sent to see if she will fall back into the pattern or rise fully into the woman she became in the fire. And she will rise. Every time she will rise, the smoke of the midnight ritual still lingers in the air. Not around him, but around her. It wraps her like a veil of remembrance. You are not here to be rescued. You are here to be revealed. The bay leaf, in its final act, became the key she didn't know she needed, the key to unlock the cage of her former self. She is no longer the girl who waited by the phone. She is no longer the girl who Googled how to make him miss you. She is no longer the girl who confused chemistry for commitment, attention for love, attraction for safety. Now, she is the woman who commands the room with her presence alone, who sits in solitude not as punishment but as peace, who burns with the quiet fire of someone who knows her worth cannot be bartered, borrowed, or broken. And that fire will never go out again. Let them come back. Let them try. Let them see what they left behind. But know this: the woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She chooses.